South Carolina's welcome signs show peach orchards and antebellum porches. What they leave off is the list state troopers actually watch after dark. 12 South Carolina towns carry the state's highest verified crime numbers. In more than one of them, people who grew up there have quietly rerouted their evening drives. This isn't a rehash of the same 3 names every listicle recycles. A couple of these towns barely make headlines outside their own county. One near the middle of this ranking sits a few miles from a Fortune 500 company's headquarters. That makes its numbers stranger than they should be. The figures ahead come from FBI reporting and state law enforcement data. And they come with a warning built in. Small populations can turn a handful of bad months into a headline statistic. So treat every number here as a starting point, not a verdict on anyone who lives there. If you like these deep dives into places the tourism boards skip past, there's more where this came from. 12 towns, starting with the one that just barely earns its spot. Number 12, Conway. Ask most people what they know about it, and you'll hear, the pretty riverfront town near Myrtle Beach. The kind of place Hallmark crews show up to film. That reputation isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. Conway's overall crime rate lands almost exactly at the middle of the state's most flagged cities, somewhere around 2,400 incidents per 100,000 residents a year. Some of that traces back to its position as a spillover town for the Grand Strand's tourist economy. More visitors and seasonal workers move through than the year-round population would suggest. That skews the per capita math. The Riverwalk still looks like a postcard. The numbers behind it just don't match the photo. Number 11. Anderson. An upstate city built around Lake Hartwell, and an old nickname, Electric City. The nickname comes from its early hydroelectric days. Downtown has been rebuilding itself with new restaurants and a livelier main strip. Away from that strip, certain neighborhoods carry a persistent drug-related crime problem. That's fed a steadier stream of property crime than the lakefront image suggests. It's a town where 2 very different Andersons exist a few blocks apart, and only one of them makes the brochure. Number 10. Spartanburg. Locals call it Hub City, a name earned from its old railroad crossings. These days it's known just as much for brewery openings and a rebuilt downtown core. None of that changes a crime rate near 82 incidents per 1,000 residents a year. Rough math puts roughly 1 in 12 people there at risk of becoming a statistic annually. The revitalized blocks downtown genuinely test safer than that citywide number implies. Drive a mile or 2 out, and the picture shifts fast. Number 9. Walterboro. Self-branded as the front porch of the Lowcountry. It's full of antique shops and wraparound porches that look built for slow afternoons. Underneath the charm, Walterboro carries one of South Carolina's worst property crime rates. There's something close to a 1 in 14 chance of being hit in a given year. When a report naming the town went public, residents pushed back hard. They argued publicly that the label was scaring off contractors and hurting small businesses that had nothing to do with the numbers. That reaction tells you something too. A rough statistic and a town's daily reality aren't always the same story, even when both are true at once. The next 4 entries carry heavier numbers, and the reasons behind them start to feel less like bad luck and more like patterns. Stick around, because the story gets stranger before the ranking gets darker. Number 8. Hartsville. And this is the one teased earlier. It's home to Sonoco Products, South Carolina's largest corporation by sales, a company with global reach and a manufacturing legacy that put this small city on the map. Sonoco's presence brings steady jobs. It brings a well-funded downtown museum, and the kind of civic pride you'd expect from a genuine corporate hometown. A few miles from that headquarters, though, Hartsville's violent crime rate runs close to 3 times the state average. Burglary and assault touch both residents and the businesses that keep the town running. That means the company logo on the water tower and the crime numbers a short drive away belong to the same zip code. Not many towns carry that particular contradiction quite this openly, and it's worth remembering the next time a corporate headquarters gets used as shorthand for a whole community's safety. Number 7. Darlington. Better known nationally for its raceway. The track is famous enough to earn the nickname Too Tough to Tame from generations of NASCAR drivers. That toughness shows up somewhere else too. Darlington posts the highest property crime rate of any city in South Carolina, outpacing even much larger places. Burglary and theft here aren't rare exceptions. They're a defining feature of the local crime picture. sitting uncomfortably close to a raceway slogan that was supposed to be about asphalt, not front doors. Number 6. Union. And its name is a little ironic given what's ahead. It holds the highest overall crime rate in the state by some measures, driven heavily by property crime. Residents here face something close to a 1 in 12 chance of being targeted in a given year. And the city ranks among the worst in the country for motor vehicle theft specifically. Union's downtown still carries the look of an old textile town. Wide streets built for a mill economy that mostly moved on decades ago. That shift left fewer eyes on the street than the layout was ever designed for. A town named for unity, sitting at the top of a list built around things being taken from people. That's the halfway point. If you're new here, this is usually where the channel earns a subscribe. The next 6 towns get considerably harder to explain away. Number 5. Estill. 20 miles south of a town you'll meet again shortly. It's a quiet crossroads community. The kind of place with one main intersection and a handful of churches that anchor the whole town on Sundays. Estill ranks second in the state for violent crime, with a rate over 2,000 incidents per 100,000 residents. That places it in the worst 10% of cities nationally by that measure. Translated into plain terms, that's roughly a 1 in 50 chance of being a victim of violent crime there in a given year, a number small enough to sound abstract. Until you remember it applies to a town most people could drive through without ever slowing down. Small population, small footprint, outsized numbers. That combination shows up again and again on this list. And Estill is one of its clearest examples. 4 towns left. And this is where the ranking stops being about isolated bad luck. It starts looking like a map of what happens when a highway changes its mind about where to run. Number 4. Dillon. Sitting right off Interstate 95. And famous nationally for one thing, south of the border. The sombrero-topped roadside attraction has pulled in road trippers for generations. Behind the neon, Dillon carries the 3rd highest violent crime rate in South Carolina by state law enforcement data. Millions of cars pass through the exit every year, without ever seeing the parts of town those numbers describe. The mascot smiles from the billboard. The statistics tell a different story a few blocks off the interstate. Number 3. Allendale. And this one has a real explanation behind it, not just a number. Before Interstate 95 existed, U.S. Highway 301 was the main route between the Northeast and Florida. Allendale sat right on it, thriving on the constant flow of travelers. Then the interstate opened a few miles east. The traffic vanished almost overnight, and decades of tourist-dependent businesses closed one by one. What's left is one of South Carolina's poorest counties, with a poverty rate near 40% and a violent crime rate close to triple the national average. Locals still call it Allendale Forward, a slogan built on genuine effort. The town isn't reckless or careless. It's a place the interstate simply drove around. Number 2. North Charleston. And the scale here is different from everywhere else on this list. This isn't a small town with a skewed per capita rate. It's a real city, home to the Port of Charleston's shipping operations, a major Boeing aerospace plant, and a busy automotive manufacturing sector. Despite that industrial muscle, North Charleston posts the highest rate of gun violence and homicide anywhere in South Carolina. Boeing jets roll off the line a short drive from neighborhoods where police responses to shootings are routine enough to barely make local news anymore. Size doesn't cancel out the numbers. In this case, it just makes them harder to ignore. Number 1. Orangeburg. And it earns the spot on scale, not just severity. Orangeburg posts the highest overall crime rate of any city in South Carolina, combining violent and property crime into a total rate nearly 3 times the national average, with a violent crime rate alone that's more than double what you'd find in a typical American city. What makes Orangeburg's case different from Dillon or Allendale is that it isn't a struggling crossroads town. It's home to 2 respected universities, South Carolina State and Claflin, institutions that have shaped generations of graduates across the state. A college town with that kind of legacy sitting atop this particular list is exactly the contradiction this video promised at the start. And it's the reason Orangeburg, not a smaller or more obscure name, closes out the countdown. Look at these 12 towns together, and a pattern starts to form that has very little to do with any single town's character. A highway gets rerouted, a factory closes, a tourist economy that used to sustain a main street dries up almost overnight, and the crime numbers rise in its place, decades later, in towns that never asked for the label. None of that means these places are hopeless, and it doesn't mean the people who live there are defined by a spreadsheet. Union is still a name someone's grandparents chose with hope. Walterboro's porches are still real. What these numbers actually tell you is where South Carolina's economic history left its clearest scars, and why a stat sheet from a state police report can matter more to your travel plans than a tourism brochure ever will. If you made it this far, drop the entry that surprised you most in the comments, especially if you've actually driven through one of these towns yourself. And if this kind of ranking is your thing, there's a whole state's worth of these still to cover. 12 towns, one highway system, and a lot of history hiding behind the welcome signs.